Yeah, okay, the recording is on. So look, please, in the Gemara, you have in Beit Amud Beit, you have 2 dots. And so I'll just add that if anyone didn't feel comfortable to tell me that he doesn't want the shiurim to be recorded, he could email me later. If people didn't feel comfortable saying it here, you could email me. Feel free. So Beit Amud Beit, there are 2 dots that we read few lines from there, but then like 1, 2, 3 lines under the 2 dots, there's Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Everyone has the spot? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Everyone got it?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. So divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Yeah, that's Rav Yehuda's 2nd generation of Babylonian Amoraim. Saying in the name of 1st generation, Shmuel. So Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel says the following. This is the saying of Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah follows the opinion of the Tana Rabbi Yehuda. Aval Chachamim Omrim. However, the sages are saying, Yachid she'asa borat beidin chayav. Meaning, the opinion of our Mishnah, the way our Masachet started, one would have learned just Mishnayos, okay, and then not Gemara, would have thought, here, the first Mishnah of Horayot says that an individual who followed the false ruling of Beit Din as a minority, even though there's no bull here brought, but also there's no individual Chatas brought, he's exempt, either because of Anus or because of special din of Horayot, he's excluded from individual Chatas. It's not the category. That's what a person that would have read our Mishnah would have thought. But that's the halacha. However, comes Rav Shmuel and tells us, no. Our Mishnah is only an opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. But the sages, they disagree. They say no. And by the way, half of the chart I made you is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. However, the sages hold that an individual, even an Amaretz, who follows the ruling of Beit Din, and it's not the scenario that there's no bull brought because it's not the majority of Am Yisrael bringing. Such a Jew will bring individual chatas. Okay? Clear? Beit Din made a public ruling that a chaylev is mutter. It's a false ruling. An individual went ahead and ate the chaylev based on their ruling. Chachamim say that's a shgaga. He ate the chaylev by mistake. Mistake could be of all kinds of reasons. It could be a mistake that he thought it's not that it's not chaylev, it's shuman. It could be a mistake that he himself thought, without a ruling of Beit Din, that it's mutter, namaret. And it could be a mistake based on a false ruling of Beit Din. All of this is still a category of individual chatas. And therefore, he's chayav chatas. Okay? That's the opinion of Chachamim. Obviously, we said that Rabbi Yehuda, our Tana of our Mishnah, makes the exemption. That's how I started the shiur today, repeating something that I'm repeating every shiur. That he's exempt either because of a consideration of anus or because of a consideration of excluded from the category of individual chatas, even though here technically a public bull is not brought because only a minority of Am Yisrael sinned. Obviously, Chachamim disagree with with both arguments, right? In order to claim what they claim, that he's chayav an individual chatas, what you need to say that they disagree with both assumptions. A, they claim this is not anus, it is in the category of shogeg. B, they say there is no din, he's not excluded from individual chatas. Even though potentially there could have been here a public bull, had more people joined him, Since the scenario is that it is not so that more people joined him, it's a minority. Therefore, he's not excluded from individual chatas. He did it as an individual, not as part of a majority. He's chayev chatas. That's chachamim. Okay, now I want to share a screen with you, with your permission. And I want to show you a famous chakira of Reb Chaim. That's important. Here. Reb Chaim in Hilchos Shgagos has the following chakira. Reb Chaim asks, in the case where the public followed the ruling of Beit Din, here the din is known. The din is that Beit Din and perhaps Am Yisrael joining them are bringing a public bull, right? That's the case that is written in the Torah, that Beit Din made a public false ruling and the majority followed them. That's the classic case of par tzibur. Par chatas, a bull, par elem davar shel tzibur. Now the Mishnayos are teaching us, and this is agreed by everyone, that it's not that each individual also has to bring an individual chatas. But theoretically, I would have said, okay, the Torah said that in such a case, we bring a public bull. Beit Din brings a public bull. But who said that the individuals of Am Yisrael are exempt from individual chatas? Meaning, perhaps, there is a chomein kefir mivtzaim. How do you translate kefir mivtzaim? You know, when you have a
Double
sale.
jeopardy.
What?
Double jeopardy.
Double what?
Jeopardy.
Jeopardy?
Yeah, what does jeopardy mean? And anyways, you don't get punished twice for something.
I know, punish, yeah, but here I made a joke. Kefil mivtzaim is when, let's say someone, stores are offering a sale, but they're clarifying that you won't have a double sale, meaning they have two mivtzaim, two kinds of sales. They said, "Ein kefil mivtzaim." There is no double deals. I don't know.
Yeah.
What?
Right,
Okay.
doubling of the deal, doubling of discounts or whatever.
Yeah, no double discount.
Adding them together.
Right, no double discount. So here, no double jeopardy, meaning, the Torah, the Mishnayos are teaching us that in a case of a public bull, you're not saying that aside from the public bull, when the majority of Am Yisrael followed the false ruling of Beit Din, and both were shogegin, as we have seen in the Mishnayos, in the Mishnah that we learned last week in the continuation of the Masechet. We learned it together last week. If both Beit Din were shogeg in the ruling, when they said that chelav is mutter, and the Am Yisrael that followed them were also shogegin, in such a case, they bring a public bull, and no one brings an individual bull, individual offer, individual kipsa, sheep. Why? Theoretically, I could have said, no, the Torah just taught me an addition. Actually, what happens here, when the majority of Am Yisrael are following a false ruling, theoretically, had I not learned the Mishnayos and the Gemara, I would have said, no, there's double jeopardy. First, they didn't need to bring a bull because it's a public sin. Also, each individual here made a mistake. Okay? The Mishnayos and the Gemara tells me, no. It's either this category or that category. If the case is a public mistake, then it's defined as a public mistake, and I don't see each individual as also responsible individually. Okay, interesting. Could be understood. Now the Reb Chaim makes a very nice chakira. How do I understand the nature of this ptor in such a case when there was a public mistake and the majority of Am Yisrael made the mistake? How do I understand the nature of the private individual exemption? Okay, how does it work conceptually? So here, let's look at Reb Chaim together. V'hineh be'ikar ha'achdina, the tzibur she'asu bo ra'as beidin, the pturin mikorban yachid. Tzarech iu. Let's analyze, he says. Im hatamu mishum shechayavin bekorban tzibur. V'im ken nimtza da korban tzibur hu sheportran mikorban yachid. Odene madavi din b'fnei atzmo. The tzibur she'asu bo ra'as beidin pturin. Ushnei dinim nifradim hem bo ra'as beidin. Chada de pturin mikorban yachid. Ve'ashenis de chayavin bekorban tzibur. Below that korban tzibur hu shepotran mikorban yachid. Very, very nice way how Reb Chaim conceptualizes this. He says, theoretically, I can understand the exemption of the individual when he's part of a majority. I can understand the exemption of each of these individuals of Am Yisrael from an individual chatas in one of two ways. Either I say, there is really no need for individual chatas, because they have their atonement already in the what? In the Korban Tzibur. I don't need two kaparos here, two chatasos here, because the public bull is already mechaper to every individual. Every individual has a link also individually to that Korban Tzibur. So his Korban Yachid is really already done. The Korban Tzibur is a kapara for the public mistake, and he made this mistake as part of that public, and actually he has a portion, we will say, in this Korban Tzibur. Korban Tzibur hu shepotran mi Korban Yachid. The actual bull is the one that exempting them from the individual chatas. That's the first understanding. Or he says maybe not. It's two separate dinim in a place of a hora of Beis Din. When Beis Din made a public ruling error, public false ruling, two halachas, separate halachas were said. A, there is a chiyuv to have a public offering. B, if the scenario is that there is a public ruling, then each individual is exempt from Korban Yachid. There is no category here of individual mistake. It's a separate halacha. It's not that the atonement for the Yachid, meaning the exemption from for the individual mistake, is because he already has a portion. His individual offering is already done via the public book. No, that's not the understanding, says Reb Chaim, according to this, the second one. The understanding is that actually there is a din. There are two separate dinim. One, there is a chiyuv to bring a public bull when there is a public mistake. B, each individual is patur. It's an individual. Why he's excluded from a category from an individual mistake? One can say, Reb Chaim, as usual, explains it very technically. If I'll bring the little neshama, like Reb Shimon, the why, not only the how, but I'll add the why here. I think the first understanding says, yes, each individual does have a response, some chiyuv of chatas, even individually. But it's okay, he's fulfilling it via the public bull. He has a portion in it. The second understanding says, no. This is not a case of individual mistake. There was a public mistake, and the chiddush with a public mistake is that, A, you bring a public offering that makes atonement for the public mistake. B, there is no individual mistake here. It's not a category. And therefore, there is a separate thing that there is no chiyuv chatas here. Individual chiyuv chatas here. Of course, you now understand neatly that Rabbi Shimon, that Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim, that have a machlokes, what happened if only a minority followed the false ruling? well, these individuals, minority, will have a chiyuv chatas or not, is really dependent on this chakira. If I say that the only reason that they're exempted in the case where the public made a mistake, the only reason why each individual is exempt from individual chatas is because the korban tzibur is pattering him, then here there's no korban tzibur brought. Therefore, again, he has to bring an individual chatas. That's the shita of Chachamim. However, if I understand according to the second understanding that actually there are two separate halachas here when the public made a mistake based on a false ruling. A, that there is a bull brought. B, a separate halacha that each individual here is exempt from individual chatas. Then there is room to say that even individuals, when they're doing it as a minority, since there was a public hurrah here, so a bull is not brought because the bull is brought only if the majority made the mistake. But the fact that a hurrah, a public hurrah, is exempting, the second thing, that a public hurrah is exempting from an individual chatas, perhaps it's valid even in a case where only the minority did, because it's already excluded, because there's a hurrah here, it's already excluded from a scenario. It's not defined anymore as an individual mistake. Even when minorities followed that ruling, it was a public ruling. Okay? I'm not saying that one Chachamim can even perhaps say that he's still chayav because you're excluded from a category of individual chatas only when the public actually followed the ruling, when you were part of the public doing that mistake. But either because of a consideration of others or exclusion, one can l'chora fall on the category of, with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah. Very good. It's clear cut that if you understand, like the first understanding of Reb Chaim, that the actual korban tzibur is the one that is exempting the individuals, clear cut you will arrive with the opinion of Chacham. Rabbi Yehuda can't hold that opinion. Rabbi Yehuda can only hold the second understanding of Reb Chaim, that it's two separate dinim. Why? One is that when the public heard, A, there is a din of bull, B, there is a distinct individual din that when there is a horas beidin, each individual is exempt from individual chatas. Okay, great. Now let's continue in the Gemara. So Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel says, Zo divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. However, Chachamim say, Yachid she'asa b'horas beidin chayav. My Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara now asks, which Rabbi Yehuda are you talking about? That you're saying, you're making this shidduch. Where does Shmuel get this naming? That the Tana of our Mishnah, the anonymous Tana of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, and that Chachamim disagree with him and say that he's chayav. The Tanya. Im nefesh achas techeta bishgaga be'asosa. This is the pasuk that explains individual chatas. That's a parsha of individual chatas that brings a sheep, a kivsa, or se'ira. Netanya, im nefesh achat techeta bishgaga be'asota. Harei elu gimel miutin. So you have here three mi'ut. How do we say mi'ut? Lamayat. Exclusions, yeah? Differences from the psukim. Let's see. Haosemi piatzmo chayav. Horas beidin patur. Okay. Nefesh. Rashi explained us the three mi'utim. Please kindly go to Rashi. It's right across, a little bit under the two dots, to the right hand. Everyone has Rashi Dibur Amatchil im nefesh achat techeta bishgaga be'asota. If one individual, one soul, will do a mistake in bishgaga, a sin bishgaga be'asota. doing that sin. So there are extra words here. Nefesh achat. Yeah, please listen. Im nefesh achat techeta bishgaga be'asota achat mimitzvot Hashem. Im nefesh achat, if one soul will make a sin mistakenly, doing that one of the mitzvot that Hashem didn't command, be'asota. As you can recognize, there are many extra words here. I can erase the word achat. Ve'im nefesh techeta bishgaga. What do you mean nefesh achat? It's totally superfluous. Im nefesh techeta bishgaga be'asota. Again, of course be'asota. He said techeta. You could say im nefesh techeta bishgaga achat mikol mitzvot Hashem. Okay? So there are many extra words here. And the claim of the Tana of Rabbi Yehuda is that there are 3 extra mi'utim here, exclusions here. Let's look at Rashi. The Mashma, nefesh techeta, achat techeta, be'asuta techeta. Meaning there are 3, I would say, subjects, if we speak about syntax. It could have said, im nefesh techeta, im achat techeta, ba'asota techeta. Yeah? So I have here 3 words, nefesh and achat and ba'asota. הרי אלו 3 מיעוטים. דמשמע בעשותה, מפי עצמו חייב. למיעוטי תולה בבית דין דפטר. I learned from here an exclusion, that in this category is only one who's making the mistake because of his own mistake. But if he made a mistake because he was relying on Beit Din, Tola b'Beit Din, you remember, our Tana of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda, makes the distinction between Tola be'atzmo, Tola or Tola b'Beit Din. Tola b'Beit Din is exempt. This is what Rabbi Yehuda claims, and Chachamim are disputing with it. But our Tana, Rabbi Yehuda, says that Tola b'Beit Din is patur. Where does he learn it from? From one of these exclusions. Nefesh be'asota mipi atzmo, and not mipi Beit Din. That's his limud. What are the 3 mi'utim? Rashi, who's a big bucky, tells us the secret. It is explicated in Masechet Shabbat. In Masechet Shabbat, in the 10th chapter, Perek HaMetzniach, L'Rabbi Yehuda, Chad lemi'utei ze oker v'ze maniach. I'm reading Rashi. Chad lemi'utei ze oker v'ze maniach. Chad lemi'utei ze yachol v'ze yachol. Chad lemi'utei yachid she'asa be'oras Beit Din depater. Okay. There are 2 other cases that are excluded. Yeah, we have 3 exclusions from the category of individual chatas. One is in the malacha of hotza'ah, of taking an item from reshus hayachid, from the private domain to the public domain, which is one of the 39 malachos of Shabbos. What happens if I'm doing it as a teamwork? What happens if I'm doing it as a teamwork? Meaning, what do I mean? When I'm doing it as a teamwork, I mean that, let's say I am taking the object, uprooting it. Uprooting it. That's the translation of oker. I'm picking it up from the floor of Reshus HaYachid. I'm taking my hand out to Reshus HaRabim, to the public domain, and then my friend is actually taking it from me and places it in Reshus HaRabim. So here, I didn't, by myself, took it off Reshus HaYachid, the private domain, transferred it, and placed it in Reshus HaRabim. As you know, Malacha Sotzah, the Malacha of taking an object from one domain to another, from public to private and vice versa, Malacha Sotzah requires 3 components: Akira, Avara, and Hanacha. uprooting it, taking it off, transferring it, and placing it. In order that I'll be chayav in chatas, I need all of these three components. Now, what happened if I did, let's say, one or two components, and my friend did the third one? I uprooted it from Rishus HaYachid and transferred it, but then I gave it to the hand while moving. I gave it to the hand of my friend, and he actually rested it in the public domain. So here, the word nefesh, meaning one nefesh, excludes that category. Therefore, there wouldn't be any chiyuv chatas in such a case. So chad, one exclusion is to exclude from a category of individual chatas when we did this as a teamwork, the way I explained, zeh oker v'zeh maniach. The second one is to exclude zeh yachol v'zeh yachol. What is zeh yachol v'zeh yachol? Here, again, it's teamwork, but a different teamwork. There is an item in Rishus HaYachid, okay, in my house. Me and my son are picking it up together, taking it together, and placing it in the public domain together. We did it all, the two of us. There is an exemption. Why? Again, because it said nefesh achat, only one, and not when two are doing it together. So that's the second exemption. However, there is a little ramification, a little qualification here. The exemption, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is only when it's zeh yachol v'zeh yachol, meaning it's not a heavy item. I could have done it on my own because it's not a heavy item, and my son could have done it on his own. But we still chose to do it together, even though each one of us individually could have done it on our own. In such a case, it is disqualified from individual chatas, and we're exempt. However, Rabbi Yehuda holds there in Masechet Shabbos that if it's a case of ze eino yachol v'ze eino yachol, meaning if it's a very heavy item, and therefore this is why both of us did it together as a teamwork, simply because there was no other way of carrying it from Rishus HaYachid, from the private domain to the public domain. It was a very heavy item. Each one of us ourselves couldn't have done it. It's a case of ze eino yachol v'ze eino yachol. Each one of us individually couldn't have done it. In such a case, Rabbi Yehuda holds that we are chayev chatas. We're defined as individuals who did the malach. Okay? So, in sum, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that the parsha of chatas, nefesh achat techeta bishgaga ba'asota, we have here three exclusions from individual chatas. One is a teamwork when I'm doing half of the job and you're doing the second half of the job. I uprooted it and you placed it. Second disqualification is when there is an item that both of us can carry and we individually, and we still chose to do it as a teamwork. Again, we are exempt from individual chatas. And the third exemption is our case of the Mishnah, when we followed a false ruling of Beit Din, and based on that, the individual did his mistake. So this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Harei elu gimel mi'utin. I'm going back to the Gemara. The Tanya, im nefesh achat techeta bishgaga ba'asota. Harei elu gimel mi'utin. Ha'oseh mipi atzmo chayav, boras Beit Din patur. My Rabbanan, what is the opinion of Chachamim? The Tanya, they have a brisa, they claim, Adayin ani omer, it appears, their opinion appears in the Braita. Adayin ani omer, still I say, mi'ut kal shechatu chayavin, she'im Beit Din mevi'im al yedeyem par, rov kal shechatu Yupturin, Shari Bedi, Mevim al Yadein Par. I would still say, perhaps, if the minority erred, they will have to bring chatas. Why? Because they have no kapara. If it was a minority, why? Because no bull was brought. So they have to bring individual chatas. However, in a case where the public did and made a mistake based on the ruling of Beit Din, maybe they will be exempt from individual chatas. Says the Braita Talmud, Lomar me'ama aretz, nefesh echat techeta me'ama aretz, afilu ruba ve'afilu kula. Wow, interesting. Against everything that I explained you before. The Braita here says, Chachamim learned there is a ribui, or not Chacham, let's wait. The Braita here saying, I'm saying it to you literally, I would have had a hava mina, that in a case of a public bull, that the people of Israel will be exempt from individual chatas as the public bull makes atonement on them. Talmud Tomar, no, it says in the parsha of individual chatas, nefesh echat techeta b'shgagam me'ama aretz. Me'ama aretz is a ribui, as if even if it's a big crowd of Am Yisrael that each one of them individually made a mistake, they should bring Tamud L'Mamar Haaretz, afilu ruba, afilu kula. But now the Gemara says, B'mai, what are we talking about? What is this Braita that we just learned is talking about? If you're talking about a case where they made a mistake regarding the action, i.e., a whole crowd of Am Yisrael thought mistakenly, each one of them, that this is a shuman. It's a different item. And it turned out to be that it's a chaylev. It was an item that everyone thought it's a fat, a regular fat, which is mutter. And it turned out that it was a chaylev. And you want to say that in such a case, even though Beit Din are bringing a public bull, they still have to bring individual chatas. They say, no, you can't say that the Mishnah, the Braita talks about this case. Beit Din my avitudu, shelo borat Beit Din mi maitu, shelo borat. The Gemara says, no, that can't be the explanation of the Braita, because then it's totally not relevant to speak about a bull. Beit Din will never bring a bull if it wasn't a mistake based on their false ruling. You can't explain the Braita as referring to a mistake in the action, because this mistake of the action has nothing to do with the ruling of Beit Din. Shikigat Maisa is not a case of a false ruling of Beit Din. So Beit Din are totally not relevant here. So why is the Braita talking about it? Ela behora. Rather, the Braita is talking about a case of a mistake done based on their false ruling. And still the Braita apparently is explaining a radical opinion that because of the ribui of me'ama aretz, even if in such a case there'll be, as we said, double jeopardy. But the Gemara doesn't want to accept that explanation in the Braita. Be'aktiv me'ama aretz b'shegigat ma'aseh u'dichtiv. The term me'ama aretz is talking about a mistake that is not referring to a mistake done based on the false ruling of Beit Din. Wait a minute. Just 1 second. Yeah, okay, I explained you correctly. Now, okay. Right. Right. So yeah, exactly how I explained it. I was just checking on myself. Uh, um, so yeah, the Gemara says you can't explain, as I said, that the simple wording of the Braita is how I explained to you. That the Braita is teaching us a tremendous chiddush that Me'ama Aretz teaches me, im nefesh techeta Me'ama Aretz, meaning even individual as a part of a crowd, that even in the case of public bull, still there is double jeopardy. Okay, that was the Horayot, the simple, but the Gemara refuses to accept such an explanation because she says, no, the parsha of individual chatas where Me'ama Aretz is written is not talking about a case of a public ruling. It's talking about a mistake of an individual mistake. Okay? So you can't explain the Braita that way. So we're stuck without an explanation to the Braita. Regarding what the Braita says, that even a majority are bringing individual chatas, you can't say that the Braita is talking about individual mistakes, because this is simple. And the wording of the Braita cannot be applied to that, because the wording of the Braita talks about a Raz Beidin. But on the other hand, you can't explain it on the case of mistake done based on a Raz Beidin only, because Me'ama Aretz doesn't refer to such a case. So what is the Braita talking about? So the Gemara says, Miktiv ma'amrit b'sham v'shagav ma'aseh u'dichtiv. Elalav. Amin elalav. Hachi kamar. Rather, no. This is the explanation of our Baraisa. Mi'ut kahal shechat'u b'shigigat ma'aseh chayavin. A minority of Am Yisrael who made just individual mistake because they thought it's a chaylev, it's a shuman, even though it's a chaylev, they are obligated. She'ein beidin mevi'im al yedeim par bora'ah. Because in such a case, even if had they been a majority, beidin wouldn't have wouldn't have brought in a bull on them. Hahen chayavin. Therefore, I understand that they are obligated because they have no potential ptor out of the bull brought on them. Yachol. I would have said Rov Tzibur Shasu B'Shigagat Maaseh. Maybe I would have thought that if I have a majority of Am Yisrael who made each one individually a mistake, thinking that the item is fat, I would have thought that they're pturim. Sharei Beidin Mevim Alem Par B'Hora, because if a public makes a mistake based on a false ruling, then Beidin are bringing on them a bull. So even though here Beidin wouldn't have brought a bull, even if they did in a majority, but since we see there is a difference between a category of individuals and majority, I would have thought that they're excluded, they're exempt. Ahavamina, Talmud Loma Me'amaretz, Afilu Rubo. So the Braita is indeed teaching me that if a majority makes a mistake not based on a Ra'ah, they're patur. Okay. Let's continue. Not they're chayev, excluding they're chayev chatas, even if a majority made a mistake, but not based on a Ra'ah, they're chayev. That's what the Ma'aretz teaches me. Afilu Rubo. Amar Papa, Mimai, Dilma Lohen, Velo Beidin. Maybe this is not the teaching. Maybe the teaching is maybe the din is not this. Yeah, okay, excuse me. I missed one point here. Let's read again. The explanation of the Braita. Okay, I'm reading it again. I explained it correctly. There's only one detail here that is dafka very important. Ela lav hachikama. I went back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 rows from the bottom. 16 rows from the bottom of the Gemara. Rather, this is the explanation of the Braita. A minority of Am Yisrael that made just a mistake, not based on a ruling, but because they, let's say, thought that it's a fat, but it turned out to be a chaylev, chayavin. Why they're chayav? Because Beidin are not bringing a bull if they would make a rule. Wait a minute. Shari ein Beidin chayavim be'ora in a case of shigigat ma'aseh, in a case where because even when Beidin, the individuals, when they make individual mistakes that have nothing to do with Horayot, they bring individual chatas, because even if it would have been a case of a public ruling, okay, then Beidin they wouldn't have atonement by Beidin, because Beidin wouldn't have brought a bull when only individuals followed their false ruling. What can we infer from this argument of the Braita? Says the Rahahen Chayavin. That's the opinion of Chachamim that disagree with Rabbi Yehuda. Meaning the nature of the ptor of individuals from individual chatas is only when Beidin are actually bringing the bull. The bull is what pattering them, like the first understanding of Reb Chaim. But if it's only individuals that followed the ruling, the false ruling of Beidin, if it's only individuals that follow the false ruling of Beidin, then they bring an individual chat. And needless to say that if it's a private mistake that has nothing to do with the ruling of Beidin, that they bring individual chatas. So again, I'm reading it. Why are they chayavin? Because Beidin, had it been a case of false ruling, will not bring a public bull on them. Hahen, however, they would have brought an individual chatas in such a case. Yahoo! Therefore, of a homer, it's clear that they bring an individual chatas in a shigigat ma'aseh, and it's just a mistake. Yahoo! I would have said that Rov Tzibur, that the majority of Am Yisrael, who just made a mistake that has nothing to do with the public ruling, they will be exempt, because had it been a public ruling, then Beidin would have brought a bull on them. Talmud Lomar Ma'aretz, the word of Ma'aretz teaches me that afilu rubo, that even when there is a majority of Am Yisrael, if they make a mistake that have nothing to do with a public ruling, that they're chayev, each one individually. By the way, what is the havamin of the Braita? I think it's very neat. The havamin of the Braita is saying the following thing. The havamin of the Braita regarding the public is saying the following thing. Since the ptor, the havamin understands, the ptor of perhaps the ptor of individuals from bringing individual chatas when there's a public ruling and a bull is brought. is not because they're having atonement by the public bull, but rather because the minute that there is a public mistake, then it's already excluded from individual mistake. So the Havamina here was radical. The Havamina says, so perhaps even not in a case of a ruling of Beit Din, once you're part of the crowd, it's like a group thing, a group mistake. Therefore, you're excluded from an individual chatas. And the siman for it, that when there is a public ruling, Beit Din are bringing a bull, and each individual is exempt. So perhaps that exemption is a separate din and applies every time when the public are making together a mistake, even when it has nothing to do with the ruling. No. When the mistake has nothing to do with a public ruling, then even if it's a separate din that individuals are exempt from chatas, it's only when it's in a context of a public ruling. Then I could see it as a public mistake that is excluded from an individual mistake. But even if individuals as a group make the same mistake, and there are a majority of Am Yisrael, no, each one of these individuals have to bring a private chatas. Now Rav Papa asks, we'll just finish that. Rav Papa says, Mimai, no, I disagree with this. You infer from the Braita, from the first half of the Braita, that when the whole basis, he says, an individual minority are chayav when they make a mistake, an individual mistake because of their own mistake that has nothing to do with Torah, you're saying because Beit Din wouldn't have brought in such a case a bull even if they made a Torah, because only a minority bring Hahen, and you infer Hahen, that means that these individuals in such a case, when they file their ruling, are bringing a korban chatas. No, maybe the inference is Hahen, maybe Dilma Lohen v'lo Beit Din. No, maybe Beit Din are not bringing a bull because only a minority followed them, but they're also patur either because of anus or because they're excluded from the category. Who told you? Braita says Beit Din are not bringing a bull. Okay, what about them? Maybe they're also exempt. The Gemara says, the Gemara says you can't read the Braita that way. If so, why did the Braita teach you a chiddush that the majority are chayev when they make a mistake that have nothing to do with the ruling? Lav michlal demiut b'mora kaimalei demechayevu b'mora. V'neder b'reisha al miuta demechayev b'shigigat maise. Uvasof nihadar al ruba l'chiyuva b'shigigat maise. Elalav delimod ar mehedar al miut demechayvim b'shigat maise. Uvasof mehedar al ruba l'chiyuva b'shigat maise. Shmamina miut b'ora chayavinem kis b'seira. V'shelo b'ora b'shigat maise chayavim. Okay, the Gemara gives a simple answer to dismiss Rav Papa's claim. If so, why did the Tana at the second half of the Braita was busy establishing that the majority of Am Yisrael, when they're making a mistake that are not included, that are not based on a ruling of Beit Din, that they're chayav? Of course, that teaches me that a minority that followed the ruling, they still have chatas. Okay? Because if not so, let's now, is that we should have at the first half of the Braita we should have found a source from the pasuk that a miut is chayav and shigigat ma'aseh. Because if the Tana would have thought, it's very simple. I explained to you Actually, when I read it, I explained it to you. That's why even Rav Papa's claim, after my explanation, I inserted already the answer of the Gemara. That way it was hard for us to understand what Rav Papa wants. It's very simple. If you claim that individuals, like at the time of our Mishnah, are actually exempt from individual chatas when there is a ruling of Beit Din, then indeed the fact that they're chayiv when they make an individual mistake is a chiddush. It's not a kavachon. You need to establish it but we don't see the Gemara busy to establish it. The Braita is only busy to establish from the pasuk, from the Ma'amaret, that a majority is chayiv individual chayiv. Why does the Gemara need a pasuk to that? Because there is a public bull in the domain that is exempting individuals from chatas in such, meaning in the case of a majority, there is a certain case when majority are making mistakes that individuals are exempt from individual chatas. Because of that, you need to establish that there's some cases when there is a majority mistake that people are chayev individual chatas. Why do you need the pasuk of Ma'al Ma'aretz, as we said? Because you have a scenario that they're exempt from individual chatas. Well, if there is a scenario that individuals, also a minority, if there is a scenario that as minority, individuals are exempt from individual chatas, as the Tana of our Mishnah claims, then you need just the same to establish from a pasuk that there are some cases where individuals are chayav chatas. From the fact that you see that the Braita doesn't do that, it seems clear to the Braita that when you're a minority, you're always chayav chatas, whether it's because of a ruling of Beit Din or not. Individuals are never in a category of exemption from chatas. Only majority, that here we know that there is a case where the individuals are exempt from individual chatas. Therefore, we need to establish from the pasuk Ma'amaretz that there are some cases, let's say when they did it not based on a ruling of Beit Din, that they're chayav an individual. Okay? So that is why it's clear that the Braita holds against Rabbi Yehuda and like Chachamim that every time, in every case, a minority, whether it's because of mistaken details or because they follow the ruling of Beit Din, they bring individual chatas. I know it's already 10:15, so let's just read the Gemara again and see how it's in the wordings of the Gemara. Ella, so this says, and Rav Papa asks, Rav Papa asks, Amar Papa mimai dilma lohen velo Beit Din, yachi ma'ir de b'kamadar al ruba l'chiyuva. Yeah, why do you need to establish only the din regarding the majority, that each individual is chayav individual chatas? You should also v'nidar bereisha al meuta de mechayav b'shigav meisel v'sov nidar aruba l'chiyav b'shigav meisel ela la midelo me'adar al miut de mechayav b'shgav maseh. For the fact that it was simple for him that a minority is chayav an individual chasid b'shigav maseh, and at the end of the Braita he was busy to establish regarding a majority that they're chayav shmamin amiut bora chayav in hen isba b'sira b'shalo bora b'shigav maseh chayavim. Okay, that's it. Yeah, okay, that's already a second question. They want to know, why did he decide that the first Braita of 3 mi'utim is Rabbi Yehuda, and the second Braita is Chachamim? Maybe say, Chachamim are, how do you know the authors of each Braita? The Gemara concludes that we have a Braita that says, like our Mishnah, that an individual, the individual that followed the false ruling of Beit Din is exempt. And we have a Braita that says that he's chayav. From where do you know that this one is Rabbi Yehuda and this is Chachamim? This is what the Gemara will explain next week. Okay. Shabbat shalom lekulam.
שבת שלום ותשמור על עצמך.
אוקיי, תודה, תודה.